Это столько собрали вместе.
That's probably no fault to them for a week. Not wind. Yeah. Wind thing. That's right. That's one of the oldest type of cooking fires there is. Back in the day, there wasn't a saw cutting any wood. You want to make a cooking fire. In our native villages, this is what you see our fires.
We just want to give you notice, and we have a lot of events going on, and so we want everybody to be aware of that. Look around, be sure to listen to us here, because this is about the 80th year he's been here. And so,
I'm really that old, yeah?
yes.
Like this. So without further ado, we're going to go into our mid straight dance. Strong heart, take it away, gentlemen.
Goes wild. That's awesome. Well, thank you. How's everyone? Well, I said hello to you in one of the oldest languages ever spoken in the eastern United States. My family is Muskogee. The Muskogee language is of the South. I drove all the way from Florida to be here. I'm very honored to come back again to the Powwow to share the culture of tribes right here in the eastern United States. When I say eastern United States, we're talking east of the Mississippi River, where native people never lived in lodges like you see out there, teepees. Our houses were houses. Some as big as the tent we're inside, some bigger. Roofs made of bark peeled off the trees in giant pieces. Roofs made of woven mats like the wigwams that you'd find in the Great Lakes. What you see out here is a small hunting camp for my tribe.
And Isaac.
I live in a swamp where lots of palm leaves grow. And the palms are used down there, just like up here they would use the woven mats or the bark peeled from the trees. But eastern woodland tribes did not follow the animal herds like out west. Tribes following the bison. And by the way, there's a buffalo hide over there. Anybody need a sleeping bed tonight? There you go. We got the king-size bison right there.
Yeah, I love that.
All the way here into Indiana and further north. And so corn and beans and squash are what many tribes noted as the three sisters, because as they planted them in the same spot, the three plants actually helped each other, just like sisters do. These are what farming tools used to look like before old John Deere showed up. That's right. These are made from what nature gives us. A bone, a shoulder bone of a bison, which was an animal that once lived here as well, the woodland bison. And this one right here is made of rock. Many of the tools all over this country native people used were made of rock. And down where I live we have lots of shells. But shells that were traded for one hand to the next, getting from Florida to Indiana, would not be used for digging tools. Down there we would use it because there's plenty of them. But because it took someone a lot of effort to get that shell here, it would have been used for lots of other purposes instead. Like jewelry. The jewelry you're looking at would represent who we are, what family you belong to, what your position of the tribe might be, maybe where you come from, the markings I have on my body, my tattoos, my jewelry, my headdress, my language, are all identifiers of what tribe we are.
Woodland, stand by.
Today in the United States there's 574 federally recognized tribes. But that's only a little bit of what was once here. This area here had a large concentration of tribes. That's why it's called today Indiana. But back long ago it was a different name, and I'll tell you about that in just a little bit. Would you like to see how this drill works?
Yeah!
That's how we would make those shells into beautiful jewelry. In this area, tribes would use the shells to make jewelry, or they would make signal horns, like the one I blew at the beginning to call you. Not a tool for digging in the ground. Okay? Now, down where I live, plenty of shells, and so they were everywhere. And so these are the farming tools from back in the day. If you might note out back there, I've got corn hanging in the sun. There was no refrigerators. All food had to be dried. If you're going to save it, you got to dry it. No refrigeration. Either eat it now, fresh, or dry it so it can last a long time. Using the sun to dry things, we could dry the corn until it's hard. Once it's hard, we can store it away in containers. Everybody say gourds. Gourds are what we kept food in, is what we kept water in. We sealed the tops of them using sap from the tree to make glue, and we could seal the top of the gourd to keep the corn in there nice and fresh. When we're ready to use the corn, we'll soak it in water in a clay pot, and we'll cook it. Before pottery, one of the oldest ways of cooking was the rocks that you see me out there cooking on. Those are slate rocks, and you can cook on them. Sometimes they'll separate or pop, but most of the time they're good for cooking on. Be careful what kind of rock you use. You would not want to use flint rock. That's what's on the end of there to drill the hole, a piece of flint. And as I push down, it begins to spin. Thank you to that round disc. As it spins, it winds itself right back up. And the drill bit, if I don't like it, I can take it out and put a different one in. That's called socketing, and it goes back thousands of years. Putting tools together just like we have tools today, they go together. Now, Stone Age technology, using the pump drill, or how about the old bow drill, known as the fire-making bow. This is a rib bone of the buffalo. The loose string would wrap around the stick. We would push down on that with a shell or a nut, like a hickory nut shell, and you could push down on that, You can also use a shell or a stone, and you can make fire this way. The wood that's used on this would be certain woods that are very dry. One of the best ones around here is also growing in your yards in your neighborhood. Everyone say yucca. Yucca's got those long, skinny leaves that have a sharp needle on the end. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, let's hear it for me.
It's got that stem that grows up out in the middle with white flowers. Well, that stem, once it drops its flowers, is perfect for fire starting. It's the best wood there is for rubbing sticks together and making fire. The leaves of the plant can be pulled apart in little strips. And those little strips, we can then twist and make rope using that grass, yucca. You can make it long, and then you can make enough to make nets to catch fish or to tie things together. We didn't only use grass like yucca, but the palm leaves like the hut I have, the moss hanging in the trees in the swamp, the husk of the corn can be made into rope, the inner bark of a tree, the inside bark of the tree, the cambion layer, very stringy, can make good rope. And so I'm going to pass this around and give you an example of how rope was made. This is the inside bark of a poplar tree. Okay? Poplar tree. I don't know if that grows up here. Does it? Okay. So that's the inside of the poplar tree. Okay? Now, another tree in the area I mentioned to you earlier was the sap, the pine tree. We would take and collect that sap by scarring the tree. We would take an axe or tomahawk and chop into it just enough to scar through the trunk, the bark, and we would get that sap to start flowing. We could collect it in a little clay pot, and then if you have enough of it, you could heat it back up, take ground up charcoal from your fire, and mix it in there, and you got nature's glue. Okay? And that's very, very strong. I'm going to pass this around and let you see how hard this is. If I'm ready to use this again, I'll take the coal out of my fire with a stick, scrape it away, and then lay this right next to it, and it'll start heating up and bubbling again, and I can use it. Or I can just take it to a flame and make it drip off. The best way to use it is when it's in the cooking pot. Not one you eat, but a pot like this one that you don't care about. And I have my glue in there, and my glue sticks. Okay? So when this heats back up, it becomes liquid. I take it out and I use it as needed. And then when I'm done, it hardens right back up, just like you see. Okay? So that's how the glue was used. That's how glue was made. Let's give you a little sample of what it's like. There you go. The tomahawk. Everybody say that. Tomahawk. Now these tomahawks are used in building things, but not by themselves. Anything made of wood has to be used with the help of fire to make it. If I have logs for my house, I want them to be a certain length. I don't chop them. That's too much work. It's easier to lay those logs across the fire and let the fire do the work. And so fire was used to build things. A canoe. Canoes were made to travel. We live by rivers. That's why English called my tribe the creeks. Some of our canoes were 20, 30 feet long. Making it was taking the coals from our fire and laying them on the log. As they burn down overnight, the next day we scrape the coals away and chop it till we start getting hard wood again. Then we stop chopping and we scrape the coals back and do it again. And so back and forth, burning and chopping to make anything out of wood was how things were made back then. An area you don't want to burn, like the walls, you had to keep it wet, but yet not get the coals down there out. And so it was a big job making things out of wood and carving using the tomahawks. Now flint knapping is the art of breaking stones into tools, and all over the world people broke rocks and made their tools. Learning to hit that rock was done by the older men of the tribe, usually teaching the younger kids around the fire how to chip the rocks and how to shape the rocks. Using striking antlers and small pecking stones, they could shape the rock the way they wanted. The antlers of the deer, also used as a knapping tool to help shape the rocks. And the rocks that you see up here on display, pretty much all of them were found in people's backyards and ended up in flea markets. because no one knew where they had come from eventually 2 generations later. So if you found an arrowhead somewhere, put it in a glass case, not in a bag where they bang into each other and get all chipped up,
Put your hands together.
and label where you found them. That way in the future someone will know. Yeah, they're all real, except for a few of them that me and friends have made. This one's over 2,000 years old. Now that's not an arrowhead, even though we call it that. That's a knife blade. And so knives back then would look like you see right here. And using that tree sap as glue, and also the animal's tendons as string. Okay, you can see what ties them together, the glue, and there's the tendon. That's right, animal tendon. We killed the animal, not a single bit of that animal is going to get thrown away. We're going to take the animal's brain, and we're going to rub it into his skin, and we're going to use it to tan the hide. Everybody say that, tanning the hide. Animal brain has tannin in it, and that's how the word tanning the hide comes, because it tans the hide. Now don't worry, we don't leave the brain on there, just for a little while. We wash it, work it, smoke the hide over the fire, and it's a lot of work to make a tanned hide from raw to a buckskin that's tanned. And if done properly, it can be worth a lot of money, $200 to $300 these days for a buckskin, a brain tan buckskin. Don't worry, the brain's not on there. Don't be afraid to touch it.
And if you refuse and you don't dance, you must pay.
Didn't the women mainly do that?
$100. And if you don't pay them $100,
Yeah, that was one of the jobs the women had. I'll talk about that in just a bit. And so, animal brain was used to tan the skin. If you don't tan the animal skin, it'll get dried out or it'll rot. If you dry it out, everybody say rawhide. This is dried out in the sun. The rawhide's what the drum is made out of that you're hearing. Rawhide can also be cut into strips. So now we can tie things together using the rawhide. See that?
don't be shy.
See how it's made? They took the stick and they cut it thin, folded it over while it was wet, because you got to wet things to make it thin like that. And so you got to do it when the wood's green, not when it's too dried out. So we can, thank you, cut that into strips.
Now look at this young lady. She's volunteering, getting ready to.
Another part of the animal is the bones. You already saw some of the bones up there made into knife handles. But animal bones can be broken, scraped on rocks until sharp. Here's the leg bone of the deer. After broken and scraped, here's what it would look like. A pin, a pick, a dagger, a fish hook, a sewing needle, a hair needle.
I know you got your hat ready.
Anybody want to get an ear piercing? Well, that's what this one's for. Hold still, let me go get a potato. Some bones were hollow, like bird bones. They became jewelry
Any of the dancers?
as well as tools for calling the animals. This is a bird caller.
How many people are here from Texas?
Anybody recognize that bird?
Thank you.
Made from the bones of a turkey. How about that?
I say boomer, I want you guys to say sooner. Boomer! Oh, come on, gotta be better.
The animal fat.
Boomer!
Animal fat was used as oils. By cooking it, rendering it down, boiling it, scraping the fat of the oil off the top. You can make candles like this one. You can also make oils for lotions. Soap is made from animal fat. So animal fat was used to keep my food from burning out there on the rock. And so the oils of the animals were useful. The hair was made into things such as headdresses, blowgun darts, the toenails, rattles for dancing. Long before bells were brought by horses of the Spanish, we had noisemakers like that. Inside the toenails of the deer is a small little bone, and that small little bone is perfectly shaped to be made into an arrowhead.
Ooh, we got two dancers. Oh, now we got a
What ties the arrowhead on there? Anybody remember? The tendon, the sinew, okay? So the animal's tendons we use for string. This is the back strap of a deer tendon. We would soak this in water for a few minutes till it's relaxed, and then pound on it with a rock for a minute. That makes it come right apart. The little stringy pieces will stretch just a bit. We wrap something with it. When they dry, they tighten back, and then we add the glue. Glue was also made out of fish skins, animal hooves, and animal bones. That's what Elmer's glue basically is today. And so are you starting to see that when the native people killed the animals, they didn't throw things away? The animal's bladder became a water bag. You may want to drink. The animal's stomach became a cooking bag. The animal's guts, what do you think we did with that? Eat it, not me. I tried civilized. Cook our food all the way. Now, animal guts was used as bait for fishing. It was also used as fertilizer in the garden. If I want to catch that alligator you see out front there, I've got to have some bait. And he likes the old guts, that's for sure. Now, where I live in my backyard, there's quite a few. You might note around my neck, I'm wearing the teeth of a big giant alligator right here. That's what these are. From a 13, 14-foot alligator. The tail of an alligator can be made into a case to hold arrows, but in this case, I've got the sword made of the nose of a swordfish. I've got the alligator's tail right here, but over here is the foot, made into a pocket to put stuff in. What's in your wallet? It also makes a pretty good back scratcher too, I might add. And so we could take animal parts and use all of them. None of them went in the garbage. That's a fish skin made into a quiver. We didn't have garbage like that. In our villages, we had use of everything of nature. Whether through weaving, making pottery, fishing was a big part of life in the East. Instead of following the animals, we farmed and we planted traps in the rivers like this one. This would be used to catch fish with rock walls that guided the fish right in. When the fish go inside, sharp spikes in there keep the fish from coming back out. The spear that you see there is made to come apart. So whenever I spear this into a fish, the gig will take off with the fish full of fight, and wherever that fish goes, no problem. My float will follow. So whenever the fish is worn out, too tired, I'll just watch for my bobber, watch for my float, and get there before the alligator does. And so, fishing was big part of life. I've got a couple fish hooks out here carved out of bone, alligator bone, deer bones, made into fish hooks. Now, I did not get to tell you this earlier today, so I will tell it in this program. Would you like to see some games and toys of the children?
Your hands on your hips.
All right. Well, there's lots of different games and toys. For the girls, at a young age, moms and grandmas would be their teachers. They would make dolls.
Anyways, this is the way it's
Dolls
going to work,
made of husk of the corn.
You
Dolls
are the
made of
judges.
palm bark.
What we're gonna
This
do
is
we're gonna
Barbie's
have you
grandma
guys
and
do
Ken's
something
grandpa
different.
and baby
You
Barbie.
thought Nan's the
And
best.
by the girls listening to mom and learning from mom and grandma, they're going to know how to make clothing for their dolls. They're going to learn how to cook food for their dolls.
Young lady,
They're going to learn to build a house for their dolls and take care of them just as if they were children. And by the time they were teenagers, they would be the babysitters of the tribe. And when old enough to get married, they would not have to leave their villages. In the eastern United States, the girls pretty much stayed in their village, and it was the men that they married had to leave their village and find their wife. Making the girls basically the clan mothers or the owners of our homes. And so the women had lots of power in the eastern tribes.
Come on out, put the money in the
People have asked me before, why did they let the women have all the power?
Rush.
Well, basically, the women made decisions different. Made of thistle or made of deer hair, okay? And the air will make that dart kill a small squirrel or a bird. And so the boys got their practice of hunting using blowguns in the garden. By the time they're old enough to go hunting with the men, their first job is going to be to chase the deer. They're not allowed to take the shot yet, even though they got a bow and arrow. Their job is to line up in the woods and make a lot of noise like young boys do. And as they make all this noise running through the woods, they're chasing the deer into the area where the best shooter is waiting. The best shooter's got a deer skin like that one over there on his back. And the face of the deer is made into a mask. Underneath that coat, his bow and arrow waiting. And as the boys chase the deer there, that's where his job comes in, to take the shot. Of course, bird calls.
Now, look at this. Just an example. In all seriousness, this gentleman is a Boy Scout.
And doing that,
Boy Scouts
that is how the idea
For him to
of
come
a
up here
flute
and
came about.
donate his time
Was a
and
bird
up
whistle.
there with the rest of his troop and what he does, getting me coffee and taking care of this arena, making sure that our saints have water and everything.
And of course, later they made them even better.
Commendable.
The flute is considered today a man's instrument, even though today girls do play the flutes. But in the native world, it was a man's
His name is
instrument,
Jacob.
and it was used for
Jacob.
courting a girl.
He enjoys
Okay, that's what it was
Minecraft,
for. Now,
Lego, Fortnite.
native people a
Lego.
lot of times did not get along with each other. Surprise, yes, we didn't get along. We had wars and battles just like Europeans had wars and battles here in America. And that was long before Europeans arrived. If you think this was utopia, don't think that way because it wasn't. Battles took place all over territories and village space and things like that. But a lot of times battles could be avoided.
I mean,
A lot of times the game was used to play a war instead of fighting a war. Balls made of deer skin or squirrel skin, more particularly the squirrel was more commonly used to make the ball. But the most deadly thing was sickness. The sickness as it came across the ocean would wipe out the eastern tribes very quickly. Where I live in Florida, these are the original people there. Today, every one of these tribes are extinct.
I don't know about you.
What is left of the tribes merged with other tribes and runaway African slaves to become a new tribe, a Spanish word, cimarron. But in our language, there's no R's like in the Spanish language. And so we didn't say cimarron. We said it like this, Seminole. Seminole. And they became the new tribes. But if you look on this map, which my glass broke earlier today. Yeah, my glass broke. It's over there in the ground. And so you can see all the names of these tribes. Miami. Not the Miami tribe from up there, up here. Okay? Even though they spell it that way nowadays, there was a tribe in Florida, but it was called Miami. And the Miami people lived along the May River, which the French called it, what the natives called it, the River of May. But later the Spanish changed that name to St. John's River, today in Florida. Okay, so a lot of things got changed as they arrived. The tribes, the way of living. We no longer lived off of nature. We'd never seen this animal before. Horses, pigs, goats, chickens, sheep, and cows were all animals brought to here in America. And it all was Florida. Florida was where they dropped them off first. And I want you guys to see this map of Florida. This is a map of Florida from 1530s. The French did this map from the Spanish explorations of Hernando de Soto and others. If you notice, this is where we're at right now. This is where Indiana is. So sorry to tell y'all, but you all live in Florida too. All of North America, the Spanish considered to be Florida. It means land of the flowers. The early guns that they brought were like the one here I have. This is a copy of a Christopher Columbus gun, known as an arquebus. The arquebus had a burning wick. The wick had to be burning. You had to light it, and then open your gunpowder place, and down here you'd have already put gunpowder, and a rammer to pack your bullet down there. And the Spanish had 12 shots around their bandolier, known as the 12 disciples. And so as they marched in, they would have this stick right here to get a good aim. And as they pulled the lever, the burning wick would lower into the powder and light it. And that's how these early guns worked. Okay? It would fire. The natives would hear this loud explosion, and no one had ever seen that or heard it except for thunder in the sky. And so the gun became known as a thunder stick, or a stick that shoots lightning inside. And so that's what many tribes knew it as in the early days. Columbus did not come here to the Americas, the mainland. He landed on the islands. In the islands. He never did come to the mainland of the United States area. It was mainly the islands down south. And the tribe he met was the Taino people, which he called Indians. And that, I guess he thought he was an Indian, huh? A little bit lost. He should have had a native guide. All right, so as the Europeans bring their trade goods to us, in 3 generations, we stop living off of nature. We start relying on the new things. Look at the way I'm dressed. Not a whole lot of native stuff on here today. Even my knife is made out of
Men's fancy dance,
No.
truffle dance.
Okay.
Song. Take it away, gentlemen.
How would we get this? You gotta have something
What's up?
valuable. First, we give them our knowledge of the woods. How to get through the woods and not be lost. We need a good scout, we better get a native. Okay? And then of course animal skins was money. Up in the Great Lakes it was the beaver and the fur animals. But down where I live it was the deer. And the deer skin was so valuable across the ocean, it's how we got the name money today is bucks. You ever heard of that? $5, $10? Long ago, a buck was the boy deer, and still is, I think. Anyways, the buck over there was worth more than the doe because it was bigger hide, thicker hide. And so the deer skins was our money, and that's how money today got known as bucks. One deer skin would only get you a knife or a mirror or a handful of nails, maybe some beads. But if you want the good stuff like a gun or the cooking pots or the things that, you know, took a little longer to make, then you needed more deer skins. So a gun, average gun in the 1700s would be about 30 to 40 deer skins, big deer skins that would be, in trade to get a gun. Now that gun probably didn't work too good. Okay? 2 more, 3:30, and again at 5:30. So get on your cellular smoke signaler and call your friends and tell them to come out to the powwow. All right, we're going to cook some food over here in a little bit. Thank you very much. Kids, there's some candy up here.
Tracking the enemy or the enemy from battle.